Now that we've got the head off, let's talk about a couple of other preventative maintenance issues. This is called the bearing edge on the drum. You want to just run your hand across it and make sure that it's even, that there's no big dents or any rough spots. When you set the head on the drum, it's a good idea to have the logo of the drum head lined up above the snares. So this logo being lined up with the snare mechanism will be a good reference point while we're playing to make sure that we're playing on the best spot to get the best sound. Check your counter hoop while you've got it off, because you want to make sure that it's perfectly round. If the counter hoop's not round, it can be very difficult to tune. When setting the counter hoop on the head, make sure that you do so that all these lugs are going straight into the lug casings. You don't want them to be at an angle, because then the lugs can get stripped out and you'll have to replace those as well. Make sure that you check the lugs while you got them out, make sure they're clean. If they need to be lubricated, do so. It'll make a big difference when you're trying to tune the drum later on. So now we've got the head on and we've got the counter hoop on. We're going to go all the way around and finger tighten each of these lugs, and that'll get us ready to do the actual tuning of the drum. Now that we've finger tightened all the way around the drum, we're going to press on the head slightly, right in the center. This is just going to make sure that the head is in contact with the bearing edge all the way around. That it's nice and even, so that when we start tuning, we're starting from a nice even spot, each lug at the same level of tension. Now, when you're finger tightening, this is when it's really important that all of your lugs have been well lubricated, because you're just using your finger not to tighten as much as possible, but just the same level of tightness all the way around. If the lugs aren't well lubricated, you're not going to be able to tell if each lug is at the same level of tightness, because some will be more easy to tune than others. So, now that we've got everything finger tightened and it's even, we're going to start doing the actual tuning with the drum key. When we're tuning with the drum key, we're going to do it in a crisscross fashion. So that just means that if you're thinking of the drum like a clock face, you start at 12 o'clock and do a half turn with the drum key. Then you move across the drum to 6 o'clock and do another half turn. Now we move right next to it to 7 o'clock, do a half turn, and then across the drum to 1 o'clock. We're going to go all the way around the drum, crisscross fashion, doing a half turn on each lug until we've gone around about 2 or 3 times. And at that point, we'll be ready to start listening to the sound of the drum and do all the fine tuning that we need to do. So now I've gone around the drum 3 times in the crisscross fashion, doing a half turn at each of the lugs. For most snare drums, this is going to get you to a place where the drum sounds good, that you're going to get the characteristic concert snare drum sound that you want. One good way to check to see if you're at a good tension level is to press down in the center of the head. The head should give just a little bit, but not too much. If the head gives too much, then it's going to be too loose and it's not going to rebound the way that you want to for the music that you need to play. But if the head's too tight and doesn't give it all, that probably means that you're not going to get the characteristic resonant sound that you want out of the drum. Now, for most snare drums, if you've done nice even levels of tuning all the way around, you're probably going to be at a place where the drum sounds good. But if you want to take it a step further and get the very best sound out of the drum, then you're going to try fine tuning. Now what this means is you want to make sure that the tension at each of the lugs on the drum head is the same. So to check that, you're going to tap the drum at the edge near each of the lugs and listen to the pitch and make sure that it's the same pitch all the way around. So to make sure that they're all the same pitch, you need to pick one and say, okay, this is the pitch that I want. Listen to that pitch and then go all the way around and make sure that the pitch is the same at each of the other lugs. If one of the lugs is too low or too high, then you adjust it accordingly until the pitch is the same all the way around the drum. Now we're going to talk about changing the head on the snare side of the snare drum. There's an endless variety of different types of snare drums. The one that we have here is one that might be typical of a school band program. The first thing to do when you're about to change the head on the snare side of the snare drum is to take the snares off of the head. In order to do that, you'll first release some of the tension on the snare strainer. Just tune it about 3 or 4 times. And then on the opposite side, maybe you'll need a drum key or a screwdriver to release the string that's holding the snares. Once you've done that, the snares come off, and then the procedure for changing this head is exactly the same as it was when we were changing the batter side head of the snare drum. When you got this new head on and it's tuned up, you put the snares back on. This is a great time to check and make sure that the string that's holding the snares on is in good shape. It's not frayed or about to break. If you're going to replace the string, make sure you use nylon or cable, something that's not going to stretch. When you've got the snares on the head, make sure that they're centered. Make sure that they're not pulling in one direction or the other. When adjusting the tension on the snares, first turn the snares on, and then adjust the tension of the snares using this knob right here. You're going to start with the snare tension very, very loose, with the snares almost off, and then gradually add tension. You want to adjust it to the point where at a low dynamic level you've got a nice crisp sound. If the snares are too tight, then the sound will be choked, and at the low dynamic level you may not even hear the snares responding. But if the snares are too loose, then you'll have a lot of extra buzz in the sound that you don't want. Now let's talk a little bit about muffling your snare drum. The most important thing to remember is you don't want to use too much muffling. The resonance of the drum is one of the most important parts of the sound that you're looking for. Some snare drums actually have a device inside of the drum that allows you to muffle it. There'll be a little knob on the side that you can adjust to push a felt pad up against one of the heads. If you're using that type of mechanism, just don't overdo it. If you want to use some external muffling, a couple of options are a handkerchief or moon gel, even a wallet. I like to use a handkerchief. And the reason is you can adjust it to take out a little bit of muffling or a lot of muffling. Sometimes I'll play with the drum wide open, very resonant. Sometimes I'll put the handkerchief just on the edge so it takes out a little bit of that resonance. Or I'll use a little bit more muffling. When applying any muffling to your drum, it's just important to remember that the sound that you're looking for in a concert setting is a resonant sound. So use your ears and find the best sound possible.